Welcome to Live Daf, your online Daf Yomi Shir.
Shalom and welcome back to today's Daf, which is Pesachim Daf Vav. We are 4 lines from the top of the Amid. Says the Gemara, Bo minei mi Rava. They asked the following shaila of Rava. We know that a behema which belongs to Yisrael is chayiv in bechor, so the firstborn is kadosh, a carbon. If the animal belongs to a non-Jew, then it's pater from bechor. What about the following case? Behemas arnoina. So arnoina is a royal tax. So the king has a claim to your herd. He's going to come and take 10%. What status should we assign to this herd? Should we consider it a behema of Yisrael, since at this point it all belongs to the Yisrael? Or should we say, since the authorities have a claim, they have a lien on the entire herd, they can take any of those animals for the tax payment, should we consider it the possession of a goy? Behemas arnoina chayeves bebchora. Is it chayiv or is it not chayiv in bchor? Let's see Rashi inside. So immediately to the right, beginning with the word arnoina. What does that mean? Hamelach noitel isur min habeima. He takes 10% from your animal, or min hatvor, or from the crop. Chayeves bebchora. Is it chayiv in bchor? The kaimelon, we learned kol sheyad nochir beemtza ptura min habchor. Whenever the goy has some involvement, some ownership, that exempts it from bchor. Shenamar li kol bchor be Yisrael avaloi b'achirim. So achirim referring to nachrim and not chayvim bchor. The question is ve'eder zeh, this herd she surei shel melech b'soichai, which contains the tax portion of the king within it. Chayeves b'bchor, losses l'koyin abchor shalhem oiloi. Is it chayiv or is it not chayiv? Explains the Gemara. What is the context of the discussion? There were 2 methods of collecting this tax. A direct collection, he would actually take the animal itself, or in some places there was the option of paying off the king. So you would offset the obligation by substituting it with money. So what exactly are we speaking here? If he has the option to offset the claim using money, in which case it's not a direct claim on the animal. You can perhaps pay money instead of the animals. And certainly in that case, there's no question that he's chayiv in bchor, because the claim of the authorities isn't necessarily a direct claim on the animal. He can just as easily offset it by paying money. Therefore, it's not considered to be an ownership of the behema, and the behema is considered a behema Yisrael and chayiv in bchor. So there's no question there. The question only applies in a location where the system works that you can't go ahead and offset the obligation via money. He has a direct claim on the animal, which he actually seizes. So what is halacha? Shall we say, since he has that claim, that lien on your herd, that exempts it from bchor, we consider the goy to have ownership there, or shall we say, well, when he takes it, okay, but up until that point, it belongs to you? So that was the question posed to Rava Amarhu Ptura. So he said that in this case, where he doesn't have the option of offsetting the tax obligation using funds, the behema is considered to be owned by the guy and is pater from bchor. We have a brayso which says that the animal is chayiv in this case. Apparently that's speaking where he has the option of offsetting it with money, in which case it's not a defined direct claim and it's considered to be within the possession of the Yisrael. So according to this version of the Gemara, Rabbi responded by saying, well, it depends. If it's a direct claim on the animal, then it's pater. If it's an indirect claim, he can offset it using money, then it's considered to be Jewish owned and it's chayiv in bchor. Ika de Amri Amar Rava. There's another version of Rava's response, which was behemas arnoina ptur b'na bchor. When we're speaking about the animal, which is subject to this tax, then it's pater from bchor afagav de matzim misalkle. Even he has the option to go ahead and offset it with funds, because there's a claim here, there's a lien, it's considered to be partially owned by the king. Isas arnoina. However, let's say we have a doe which is subject to the same tax. Chayevas b'chala. In that case, you must separate chala. We know that a doe which belongs to a Yisrael is chayiv in chala, but not one that belongs to a goy. So even though this isas arnoina is subject to tax, and the goy will take a portion of this dough, we say that it's chayiv and chala, we consider it as though it's Jewish owned. Even if he has no option of offsetting the obligation using money. Even though it's a direct claim to the dough, he's chayiv. My time, what's the reason for this discrepancy? Rava tells us that when it comes to the animal, we consider it to be non-Jewish owned. He's pater in all cases, even if he has the option of offsetting the obligation with money. And in contrast to the dough, where we learn just the opposite, then in all cases he's chayiv. Why this discrepancy? Says the Gemara, Behema isla kala. When it comes to an animal, there's a voice, meaning there's noise. It's publicly known, it's common knowledge that the king will come and take 10%. In which case, we consider the entire herd subject to that tax, committed to that tax obligation, and therefore the goy is considered to be a partial owner. Isa lesla kala, as opposed to a dough, where it's not common knowledge that a portion of this dough will be handed over to the king. The Rashash explains that the portion of the king was generally taken when it was still in its grain form. So he has a dough here, and necessarily does everybody understand that it's going to be partially given to the guy? So if they'll see, the onlooker will say, look, he's consuming it without addressing the chal obligation, it can cause confusion. Therefore, Rava says, when it comes to a dough, you're always chayev. In contrast to the behema, you're always pater. It's common knowledge that there's a claim on one's herd on account of the authorities, and therefore it's considered to be partially government owned, and in either case, whether or not he has the option of a mesalak bezuzeh, we consider it to be a behema of a guy. Some conclusion. When it comes to the arnoina, this royal tax, so if you have a dough which is subject to this tax, we say it's chayiv and chala because it can cause confusion. It's not something which is commonly understood and known. When it comes to behema, we have two versions. According to the first version of Rava, well, it depends. If he has the ability to be masalik bezuzeh, in which case it's not considered a direct claim on the animal, he is chayiv and b'cher. If it's a direct claim, because he doesn't have the option of offsetting the claim with money, then we consider it to be non-Jewish owned, and he's pater from b'cher. According to the second version, in either case, whether or not he has the option of offsetting the claim using his money, the animal is pater from b'cher. We consider it to be partially government-owned animals. Continues the Gemara. Tanu Rabbanon, Nachri shenichnas l'chatzer shel Yisrael. The guy should walk into the chatz of Yisrael, ubetzeika b'yadai, and he's holding on to his dough, to his chametz in his hand. Ein zakuk levar. Yisrael doesn't have to be concerned with disposing of this chametz, because it's the guy's chametz. He didn't take responsibility for the guy's chametz. However, if the guy deposited that chametz in the possession of the Yisrael, and the Yisrael assumed achrayus, he took responsibility for the security of the chametz, zakuk levar, he has to go ahead and dispose of this chametz. As we learned yesterday, when you take achrayus, it's as though it's yours. And we learned this from the pasuk lo yimatze. Continues the brisa, yichad lebayis. Let's say the guy wanted to leave his chametz there. And Yisrael says, look, here you have the house there, take one of the corners and put your chametz there. So he didn't take responsibility. He designated a corner for it. Ein zakuk levar. In this case as well, there's no need for the Yisrael to worry about disposing of the chametz, because he didn't take responsibility for the chametz of the guy. Shenemar lo yimatze. We learned this from lo yimatze. Says the Gemara, Maika Amar, what do you mean? How do we learn this from lo yimatze? Amar Papa Aresha Koitz, going back to the first halach. This is what the Brisa means to say. If he actually deposited the chametz with the Yisrael, and the Yisrael assumed responsibility for the chametz, zakuk levar, then he has to go ahead and dispose of the chametz. Shenemar lo yimatze. As we learned yesterday, lo yimatze teaches us that accepting a deposit for which you take responsibility requires bir chametz. So according to Rav Papa, the pasuk lo yimatze in the Brisa is actually referring to the first halacha. A chametz for which you take responsibility is your responsibility to get rid of it. Rav Ashi Amar lo yimatze. Certainly lo yimatze here is speaking about the second halacha of the Brisa. Lo yimatze koi. V'chik Amar. This is what the Brisa is saying. Yichad lebayis ein zakuk levar. If the guy wants to place his chametz there, and Yisrael turns to him and says, look, put the chametz there anywhere, you find a nice corner, that's designated for your chametz. So you didn't take responsibility. In that case, there's no concern. The pasuk says the chametz shouldn't be present in your home. This is not his. He has no access to the chametz. He's not using the chametz. He's not responsible for the chametz. It's the guy's business. The nachik could come ayil lebeisa. The nafshik come ayil. When the nachik comes in, lebeisa the nafshik come ayil. He's going to his own room, to his own home. So Farshim explained, based on the Gemara of Metzia, that if the homeowner tells the guest, look, put the thing in front of me, that indicates responsibility, taking achrayus. If he says, put it lefanech in front of you, in that case, he's clearly absolving himself of any responsibility. Question is, in the case where he says, look, put it on the corner. So the Gemara here tells us that even in that case, it's as though he indicated to him, look, I'm not taking responsibility. It's your business, find yourself a corner. It's unrelated to me. And that explains why the Yisrael has no responsibility for this chametz. So although he didn't specifically say, I'm not taking responsibility, but since he told him, put it in that corner, which will be designated for you, for your use, that's tantamount to telling him, put it in front of you, leave me out of it. Says the Gemara, "Lememra de schirus kanya." So, do you mean to say that a tenant who rents a property, that is tantamount to acquisition? It's as though he acquired that property. And that explains why in this case, where he's allowing him the use of a certain corner, it's as though he told him, put it lefanecha, put it by you, in your possession, leave me out of it. Because giving him the allowance of use, allowing him to use a portion of the property, is as though you gave him that portion of the property for his own personal use. It's as though he acquired it. It's considered as though it's his property. And that implies a lack of taking responsibility on account of the homeowner. So you mean to say that if a person rents, it's as though he acquired the property? We have a Mishnah which seems to indicate otherwise. The Mishnah with Zara tells us that one may not lease property to a goy in Eretz Yisrael. So, although he can't rent a home to the goy in Eretz Yisrael, but he can do so in Chutz La'aretz. But even in those places where the Chacham allowed rental to the goy, it wasn't allowed for personal use, personal dwelling use. Why? We're concerned that they're going to bring Avodah Zarah into this home. So Rashi explains, what was the rental for? If you can't give it to him for his personal dwelling, apparently it's only mutter for storage use. Says the Gemara, what's wrong with personal dwelling? He's going to bring it up by the Zara there, but it's his property. Now if you tell me that a tenant has acquired the property, it's a limited sale, so it's his business. When he brings up the Zara, where's he bringing it to? His own home. So what's the concern? Says the Gemara, apparently schirus doesn't equate with purchase. If so, how do you explain our Gemara, where when he designated a corner in the home, we consider it as though it's the guy's property? Shani hacha. The difference here is the afkir rachman of lashon lo yimatzeh. Because the Torah expresses the issa with the words lo yimatzeh. What do we learn from that? Misha matzeh biyotcha. It's only a concern if it's matzeh biyotcha. It's accessible to you. You've assumed responsibility for it. It's with your hands. As opposed to the chametz that the guy is simply bringing in and putting it into the corner with the permission of the Yisrael. In this case, the fact is the Yisrael didn't assume responsibility for it. He told him, look, mind your own business, find yourself a corner, put it there. So even though generally use allowance is not equated with acquisition, it's not as though it's his property, it's still the Yisrael's property, but since he allowed him to use that corner, it's as though he told him, look, keep it to yourself, leave me out of it, I want to assume no responsibility for your chametz. And therefore it's not called matzeh biyadcha. It's not intended for Yisrael's use. He has no interest whatsoever in this chametz. And therefore, it is mutter, and there's no concern of bal yamatzeh. Taisus has a chiddush. He says that we're speaking even if the Yisrael was mekabel achrayis, so he assumed responsibility for the safety of the chametz. It's still mutter because he was meyachad lebayis. He designated a location for the chametz. It's meant to stay there. This is your area. This is your personal space. So even in the case where the Yisrael assumes responsibility for it, there's no issur whatsoever. Okay, so in short, when the Yisrael assumes responsibility, we say that it's asur. When he doesn't, we say it's mutter. And Taisus adds that even if he was mekabel achrayis, but if he was meyachad lemakayim, there's no concern. Continues the Gemara. Amar Rabbi Yehuda Hamoitze chametz bebeisa b'yamtiv. Should a person happen to find chametz sitting in his home on Yom Tov, what do? Kaifa olav esakli. He takes a kli and covers the chametz with a kli. So he inverts a kli to get it out of the way. And Rashi explains there's no concern of a bayiro, speaking that he did bittul, but the concern is that he might actually accidentally consume the chametz. So he inverts a kli over the chametz to keep it separate and safe. Amar Rava, im shel hegdeshu einoy tzorich. This chametz should belong to hegdesh. There's no need to cover a kli over it because my taima. Why mivdal bdili minei? A person is accustomed to be separated from hegdish, regardless of the Pesach concern, of the chametz concern. Throughout the year, a person doesn't interact, doesn't go ahead and consume hegdish. And therefore, there's no need to protect yourself from accidental consumption. Let's say a person has the chametz of a guy in his property, and certainly he wasn't mekabel achrayis, so there's no concern. But there is a concern perhaps of accidental consumption. So here as well he has to do something to separate himself from the chametz. We're speaking about Erev Pesach. So he goes and builds a mechitza, 10 tfachim, to separate himself from the goy's chametz, to create that indicator of separation. Here again, if this chametz belongs to hegdish, no need for the mechitza, my taima, mivdal, bdili, insheminei. People are generally accustomed to separating themselves from hegdish, and there's no concern of accidental consumption. Let's see Rashi inside. So off to the right, about 6 lines down, beginning with the words koifal v'sakli. So getting back to the first halacha, a person happens to find chametz in his home, he takes a kli and covers the chametz with it. Why can't he just pick the chametz up? Because chametz is moktzah, or may not just pick it up and take it out. Says Rashi, but in any case, he's not over on the Isser Bal Yirah, because this fellow certainly did bittul before Pesach. As we're going to learn later on Amud Beis, whenever a person does b'dikas chametz, immediately he proceeds with bittul to nullify, to negate the chametz. So that addresses the Bal Yirah concern. So what then is the problem? The need to cover the kli over the chametz is simply to avoid accidental consumption. But when it's hegdish, there's no concern. Why? Mivdal b'dili minei, afilu b'choil, lo madhu lifresh mimenu. Even during ordinary weekdays, a non-Pesach day, a person is accustomed to keeping a distance from hegdish. So there's no concern of accidental consumption. And the Gemara continues, chametz shel nachri, hamufkad eslei, v'lo yikivu lo l'achrayis, the mutal ishaisei. If he should have the chametz of a guy for which he didn't assume responsibility, and therefore he's allowed to keep it in his possession, what do you do there to keep yourself separate from the chametz? On the 14th day, Erev Pesach, mishum heker, to create that indicator. So you shouldn't accidentally eat the chametz. Says Rashi, now what's wrong with just putting a kli over it? That's not enough for the entire 7 days of Pesach. Because he can just perhaps walk over and pick up the kli, which he's going to need, and will expose the chametz. There's a concern about using the kli, therefore a kli doesn't suffice. A mechitza will do the job. What about the first case, where you found the chametz on Pesach? We use a kli, says Rashi, for out of practical considerations. You can't make a mechitza on Yom Tov. So kli is enough. We hope that just for the 1 day purpose here, until Matzah Yom Tov, a kli is enough. Or b'layli v'arena, certainly at night, Matzah Yantiv, he'll pick up the chametz and burn it. So in summary, if a person has chametz in his home, if he finds it on Yantiv, he covers it with a kli. If he's accepting the chametz of a goy, of course he didn't take a chreis for it, so he's speaking before Yantiv, he makes a mechitza 10 tefachim to create that separation. And if the chametz happens to be of hegdish, there's no concern whatsoever, no need to cover or to make a mechitza. Continues the Gemara of Amar Vidamarav. Hamafarish, if a person sets out on a sea journey, or a land journey with a shayara, a caravan, and there's some chametz in his home, does he have to tend to it or not? If he sets out on his trip before 30 days, so prior to the 30-day period preceding Pesach, so it's 31 days before Pesach, which is still very far away from Pesach, he doesn't have to tend to disposing of this chametz. If it's within 30 of Pesach, he has to go ahead and get rid of the chametz. What's the point of 30 days? The Gemara soon will tell us that 30 days before the Yom Tov is considered the preparatory period of that Yom Tov. You begin discussing the halachas of the Yom Tov, and there is a chiyuv to tend properly to the requirements of the halachas of that Yom Tov. So if he left before 30 days, there's no concern here of Isser, because he's going to be gone. He's going to be far away from his chametz during Yom Tov, in which case the chametz is considered to be inaccessible to him, and there's no Isser whatsoever. It's like Tashvisu, because it's inaccessible to him. And therefore, he doesn't have to worry about it. However, if it's within 30 days, in which case it's already considered to be within the preparatory period of the Yom Tov, we don't simply allow him to leave town and leave his chametz behind. Because lichatchila, the preferred method of disposing the chametz is not just ignoring it and making it inaccessible. Rather, you're meant to go ahead and remove the chametz from your possession, from your properties. Therefore, if it's within 30 days, you're meant to tend to it properly and remove the chametz from your property. Amar Abaye, this that you just told me, that if he leaves town within 30 days of Yom Tov, he has to go ahead and remove the chametz, dispose of it. That's only a concern if he intends on returning, because then there's a very real concern of Avera. What happens if he comes back on Pesach and he finds his chametz in his home? He's going to be over on Bali Ro Bali Matzah, because now it's accessible to him. Therefore, says Abaye, the concern is very real, that he'll do an Avera on Isser, and that's why he has to remove the chametz from his property. Now, why can't he just do bittul on the road? So the truth is he could do bittul, but there's a concern that he'll forget to do bittul, because he's not being involved in bedikas chametz. He's not checking the home. He's on the road. So, as we're going to learn later, bittul goes together with bedika. As soon as you finish bedika, you follow with bittul. It's a defined, the Chacham established a defined specific time for bittul. But this fellow is not involved in bedika, perhaps will neglect to do bittul. So, if we assume that he won't do bittul, and then he shows up in his home and sees a chametz, which now is accessible, so it's his chametz, accessible chametz, and he's doing an isser. And at this point, he can't be mevatel. As we're going to see later, because it's no longer his. It's asur b'hana, bittul doesn't work any longer. Therefore, Abaye explains that if he leaves town within 30 days, and he intends on returning, so he'll be on Yom Tov, then there's a very real concern of the chametz posing a problem, and that requires him to dispose of the chametz before he leaves town. But if he has no intention on returning, and he's okek, then he doesn't have to dispose of the chametz. Why? Because he's far away, it's inaccessible to him, and there's no isser. If this fellow intends on returning, I feel Rosh Hashanah Nami, even if he left town Rosh Hashanah time, 6 months before Pesach, if he intends on returning and confronting his chametz, and then he has to go ahead and remove the chametz before he leaves town. That's not dependent on the 30-day period. Elamar Rava, says Rava, no. Says Rava, we have to reconfigure this halacha. This that we said, this kula, that if he leaves town prior to that 30-day period, he doesn't have to be Mavar Chametz. This kula only applies in a very specific case. Lo Yamar, that's only said El She'en Dat Alachsa. He has no intention of returning. So he'll be far away, the chametz will be inaccessible to him, and since he left town prior to the 30-day period, he doesn't have a chiyuv to properly dispose of the chametz. Just making it inaccessible is sufficient. But that's because he has no intention of being chayzer, of coming back here. Avodat Alachsa. But if he intends on returning, he'll be present in his property on Pesach and confront that chametz, which is now accessible to him. I feel Rosh Hashanah Zachik Levar, even if he left town Rosh Hashanah time, he must make sure to get rid of that chametz, which he will see and which he'll be confronted with when he comes back on Pesach. So Rava says like this: in the case where he's going to be here on Pesach, then regardless of when he left town, he has to take care of this chametz, because if he's here on Pesach, he'll see that chametz, it'll be accessible to him, and he'll be doing an isser. The kul only applies when he has no intention of coming back. Then we say, well, if he left town before 30 days, then just leave it alone, because it's inaccessible, and he won't come back during Pesach, so it's going to remain inaccessible. But if he leaves town within the 30-day period of Pesach, then he has to tend to it properly. He can't just leave town and make it inaccessible. He has to actually go ahead and do bir chametz. V'az Rava tamei. Rava is actually consistent with his own opinion stated elsewhere regarding a similar case. Damar Rava, oisa beisai oitzer. If a person converts his home into a storage house, he's going to pour grain on the ground and bury the chametz there. So it depends when that happened. Koydem shleishim yayim. If he did this before the 30-day period, in Zokik Levar doesn't have to tend to his chametz, because we know that chametz which is buried is considered to be inaccessible and non-existent. So if this happened before 30 days of Pesach, he properly addresses chametz in that manner, it's covered with the grain, it's okay. But if he's doing this within 30 days of Pesach, well, this type of bir chametz is not really the preferred method. Just burying a chametz, that's not the way to go. So if it's within 30 days, Zakak Levar, he has to first remove the chametz from that home, and then he could fill it with his grains. And even this kula, which applies to koidim shloishim, that's only said in the case of she'ein dat lefan noiser. If he has no intention of clearing the storehouse before Pesach, so it's going to remain buried throughout Pesach and inaccessible, so it's okay. Avodat lefan noiser. But if he intends on clearing the grains from his home by the time Pesach arrives, in which case the chametz buried beneath that pile will be fully exposed and accessible, then regardless of when he's doing this, afilu kodim shloshim yoyim, nami zakek levar. So even if he should do it a half a year before Pesach, but since he's going to clear it out, and come Pesach, the chametz beneath it will be exposed and accessible, he's going to be doing an isser bal yor bal matzah. So he has to make sure to first clear his home completely of chametz, and then convert it into a storage room. Okay, so conclusion. We learned that in a case where a person is setting out on a journey, we have two shittas. Abaye says, if it's koidim lamed yoyim, there's no concern, because the chametz is inaccessible on Pesach, he doesn't have to get rid of it. If he's leaving within 30 days of Pesach, then it depends. If he intends on returning on Pesach, then he has a concern, he has to go ahead and remove that chametz prior to setting out on the journey. According to Rava, even if he leaves town before 30 days, if he intends on returning, then certainly he has to go and tend to his chametz and dispose of it. And certainly if it's within 30 days that he's leaving, in all cases, he has to go ahead and dispose of his chametz property. Continues the Gemara, 3 lines from the bottom. Hani shleishim yoyim, where do we find this concept of this 30-day preparation period? Kedesani, as we into the Brisa, shoyalin v'doishin b'ilchas Pesach. We inquire, we expound regarding the halachas of Pesach, koidem Pesach shleishim yoyim, for 30 days prior to the Yom Tov of Pesach. That's the shita of the Tanakama, who sets the time frame at 30. Rabbi Shimon Gamliel Omer, shtei Shabbosos, 2 weeks. That explains the previous halacha. Within 30 days, according to Tanakama, it's considered to be the preparation period of the upcoming Yom Tov, which obligates a person to tend properly in a preferred manner to the halachas of the upcoming Yom Tov and do bir chametz properly. Continues the Gemara. My time at Tanakama. What is the source of the Tanakama who gives us the number of 30 days? What's the raya? Shari Moshe oimed Pesach Rishon. We find that Moshe Rabbeinu was standing during the first Pesach that takes place in Chodesh Nisan, umazer al Pesach Sheni, and instructed Klal Yisrael regarding Pesach Sheni, which was only a month later. So we see that within 30 days, it is already appropriate to address and get involved in the halachas of the upcoming Yom Tov. Where do we find it? Shanamar, v'yasu b'nei Yisrael ha'Pesach v'mayadoi, or as the Gillian on the side brings another pasuk, v'yasu ha'Pesach v'rishon. So the pasuk describes Klal Yisrael bringing the Korban Pesach, the first Korban Pesach Rishon in Chodesh Nisan. And then, what does it say there? Uksiv v'yi anoshim asher hayu tmeim nefesh adam. The pasuk describes the people who were tummy, and Moshe Rabbeinu was explaining to them how they're meant to proceed. They're meant to bring the Pesach in the next month. So the following Pesach was 30 days away. Apparently, 30 days is the time frame for proper discussion and preparation for the upcoming Yom Tov. So that's the Shita Tanakama, who gives us the number 30. Rabbi Shimon Gamliel Amalach, Rabbi Shimon Gamliel, who says it's merely 14 days, how is he going to respond to this raya? I did the Ayri Mila de Pischa. Once Moshe Rabbeinu has been discussing the halachas, the topic of the Pesach, Masik Lahu L'chol Mila de Pischa. Once the pasuk began describing Korban Pesach, it already concluded with all the halachas, including the details pertaining to the next Pesach a month away. But generally speaking, there's no need to initiate a discussion and an involvement regarding the upcoming Yom Tov beyond the 14-day preparation period. My time at Rishim Gamliel. Okay, so what's his source to set the number at 14? Says Moshe Oimed b'Rish Chodesh. We find that Moshe Rabbeinu was standing on Rish Chodesh Nisan, umazer al Pesach, and was instructing Klal Yisrael regarding the details of the upcoming Yom Tov, of the Korban Pesach. Shenamar hachodesh hazeh lochem reish chadashim. So the pasuk here is describing chodesh hazeh, which is Nisan, Rish Chodesh Nisan. So it's the Rosh of the Chadashim, and then proceeds to say, Yuksiv dabru al Chadas Yisrael leimar, go tell Klal Yisrael ba'asal chodesh hazeh on the 10th day of this month. Yud ben Nisan, v'yichol ish celebrates aves v'gomer. So you see that on Rosh Chodesh, he's already instructing them regarding the upcoming Yom Tov. So apparently the limit is 14 days. Says the Gemara, Mimai de Breish Yarchakoi. How do we know that Moshe Rabbeinu related the halachas to Klal Yisrael right then on Rosh Chodesh, when he was told the halachas by Hashem? Dilma ba'arba b'yarcha, b'chamisha b'yarchakoi. Maybe he actually handed it over to them, related the halachas to them a bit later, the 4th or the 5th day of Nisan, which is actually closer, less than 14 days to Pesach. So this isn't really a good raya. Ela marabba bar simi mishmed ravina mahacha. This is the source of Rab Shimon's 14-day preparation period. So the pasuk here is describing something which took place B'Shana Shenis, second year, B'Chodesh Harishon, the first month, which is Chodesh Nisan. Uksiv, what does it say there? V'yasu b'nei Yisrael ha'Pesach v'mayadei. Klal Yisrael should go and bring their Pesach in its right time. And we see. So what do we see from here? That something which was related to them on Rish Chodesh pertained to the following Yom Tov. So apparently 14 days away, 14 days before the time of the Hakarvas Korban is an appropriate time to begin preparation and instructions. Says the Gemara Hachanam here as well, how do we know that this took place on Rosh Chodesh? The pasuk simply says B'Chodesh Harishon. It was during Chodesh Nisan. How do you know it was on Rosh Chodesh? Maybe it was on the 4th day of Nisan, other 50 of Nisan, which is actually less than 14 days to Erev Pesach. Omar of Nachman Bar Yitzchak, Asya Midbar Mi Midbar. We learn it from Exer Shava, using the word Midbar, which is stated in this context, with Midbar stated in a different context. Ksiv Hacha, B'Midbar Sinai, the pasuk here says B'Midbar Sinai. So we have the word Midbar, Uksiv Hasam, and we have elsewhere where it also uses the word B'Midbar. Vayidaber Hashem Moshe B'Midbar Sinai, Bo'il Moed, Be'echad HaChodesh HaSheni. There the pasuk is speaking about the mitzvah of counting Klal Yisrael. So the pasuk speaks about something that took place Be'echad HaChodesh HaSheni, on the first of the second month of Iyar. And the pasuk uses the word B'Midbar. So we connect Midbar to Midbar. Mala Halam Rosh Chodesh, just as that pasuk is describing something which occurred on Rosh Chodesh. The pasuk clearly says, was Be'echad HaChodesh HaSheni, on the first day of Iyar. Afkam Rosh Chodesh, likewise, our pasuk, which is speaking about the introduction to the instructions regarding the Korban Pesach, where we find the word Midbar, is also something which took place on Rosh Chodesh. So this is Reb Shimon Gamliel's source that we're meant to get involved 14 days prior to the upcoming Yontiv, as we find that on Rosh Chodesh Nisan, Moshe Rabbeinu instructed Klal Yisrael regarding the Korban Pesach. Okay, so now the Gemara is going to go into a small tangent regarding the sequence of the parshas. V'nichtav v'reisha the Chodesh Rishon, v'ha nichtav the Chodesh Sheni. We just discussed two psukim where there's the word Midbar contained in them. One pasuk was regarding counting Klal Yisrael, which actually took place on Rosh Chodesh Iyar, and we cited a pasuk which described the Korban Pesach procedure, which was related on Rosh Chodesh Nisan. Now, if we take a look at the Chumash, what do we find? That Chumash Bamidbar begins describing the parsha of the counting, which actually took place later, Rosh Chodesh Iyar, and then only later in the Chumash in Parshas Bahaloischa do we find the other parsha discussing the Korban Pesach, which actually occurred much earlier, Rosh Chodesh Nisan. Why do we find this interesting sequence that the thing that happened later is recorded earlier, and the one that happened earlier recorded later? V'nichtav v'reisha the Chodesh Rishon. Why didn't the Torah first record the parsha that happened in Chodesh Nisan, meaning the one discussing Korban Pesach, but the nichtav the Chodesh Sheni, and then afterwards record the parsha took place during the second month, Chodesh Iyar? Apparently, we learn from this the Torah is not really particular about the sequence of the parshas. Meaning, although there's a deep meaning and precision to the sequence of the way the parshas are recorded in the Torah, but not necessarily are they going to be reflective of the actual chain of events, such as in this case where we find that Chumash Bamidbar begins describing counting Klal Yisrael, even though that event took place later, after the parsha of Korban Pesach, which is actually recorded later on in the Sefer. Continues the Gemara, Amar of Papa Lo Amar, this is only said, this being not particular about sequence, is only said a little bit straight in Yoni, when we're speaking about two parshas, such as our discussion here. Aval Bachad in Yona, but when we have psukim within one parsha, certainly in that case, it's recorded precisely the way it was said from Hashem, Maida Muktam Muktam, a pasuk which is stated earlier comes first, Maida Mu'uchar Mu'uchar, a pasuk which is stated later was taught later. So the psukim within the parsha itself are arranged precisely in order. Why? Because otherwise things won't work out. Klal Prat. We know that one of the Yud Gimel Midas Shater and Dreshes, one of the formulas is Klal. The Torah describes something in a general form, and then follows with a more specific description, Klal Prat. So we say Ein Bechlal El Mashav Prat. What the Torah had in mind is that we're meant to interpret the general term using the specific term. How do we know that we're meant to apply this formula? How do we know that it's a klal and then a prat? Dilma, perhaps just the opposite. If the psukim are not arranged properly, perhaps it's pratu klal. First meant to apply the detailed term was expressed, and then the general term. How do we know that it's meant to be learned in this manner? Vesu, additionally, we have another formula called pratu klal. So when the Torah first speaks in a specific, defined manner, and then generalizes things, pratu klal, nasa klal moisva prat. We say that the general term is going to add to the prat. Here again, dilma klal pratu. How do we know that it's a prat and then a klal? If the psukim can be reversed and are not really recorded in proper sequence, perhaps really it was meant to be the klal and then the prat. Dilma klal pratu. So apparently, psukim within a parsha are recorded in accurate sequence. That's the way they were meant to be recorded. That's the way they were taught by Hashem. And that's why we can apply these formulas. If that's the case, even when we're speaking about two different parshas, how can we go ahead and say, if you have a klal in this parsha and a prat in the other parsha, we can apply the formula of klal prat? Well, the parshas aren't necessarily meant to be sequenced in this manner. Perhaps they're out of order. Different than the way the event actually occurred. So how can you apply a klal prat using a klal from one parsha and a prat from the other? How do you know it's klal prat? Maybe it's prat or klal. Says Mahanich L'man Omar. This works well. It's not difficult. This kasha wouldn't apply L'man Omar according to the Shita, which says klal prat hamrochaken them and zeh. Whenever you have a klal and a prat which are situated at a distance from each other, not within the same area, then we don't go ahead and apply this klal, this formula of klal prat, shaper, and it works well. There's no concern. Because if they're in different parshas, in any case, we're not going to apply this formula, so there's no concern. But according to the Shita, it says that even when they're far away, we have a klal in one parsha, prat in the other, you can combine them and use them as a single formula. If that's the case, then how? How can we apply it? Perhaps the klal prat is really a prat or klal. It says, even according to the Shita, that we can go ahead and apply the formula in this manner. That's only when the klal prat are within the same parsha. So yeah, they're not right near each other, they're at a distance from each other, but they're within the same parsha, in which case you know the seder of the psukim is precise and exact. But certainly if the klal prat are situated in different parshas, all agree, we cannot apply it as a limud, as a klal prat, and therefore there's no concern about things being out of sequence. Okay, so in summary we learned that there's a machlekes between Tanakama, who says within 30 days of a yontif is considered to be the preparatory period of that yontif. Rabbi Shimon Gamliel says 2 weeks, and Tanakama learns from the fact that there was discussion about Pesach Sheni during Pesach Rishon, which was a month prior. Rabbi Shimon Gamliel learns from the fact that there was a discussion on Rosh Chodesh Nisan pertaining to the following yontif 2 weeks away. Continues the Gemara. Omar Vida Marav. Ha-boidek. Although a person is checking for chametz, tzarech sheyivatel. Immediately after bdikas chametz, when he removes the chametz from his home, he has to go ahead and proceed with bittul to negate the chametz, to nullify it. According to Tosfos, it works with the concept of hefker. He says, well, my time, why? If you have no chametz, why do bittul? Is the concern on account of crumbs which you perhaps missed? You overlooked those crumbs. In which case, you'd be doing an isser by having those crumbs in your possession, and therefore you have to do bittul to account for them. Crumbs in any case have no significance. They're but on their own. There's no concern about crumbs. Perhaps you'll say, sure, on their own they have no significance, but this fellow who's going to lock his home at night, perhaps the fact that he's securing everything within the home, even the crumbs, that grants prominence to those crumbs. They're no longer bottle. And therefore he has to dress those crumbs in order not to be over abayi rabbi matzah. So although it was really consequential, he had no intention of safeguarding crumbs. But perhaps even in this case, they get chashivas. Says Gemara, are you going to say that? No. Vatani, we went to a brisa which indicates that we don't apply this type of reasoning. Brisa says sufei or seifei te'enim. the end of season crop of the figs, which are low quality, won't really ripen. So this fellow has these types of figs in his field. Now he goes and he locks his field, secures his field, but he really has his good quality grapes in mind. But inevitably, those low grade figs will be safeguarded as well. But that wasn't his real intent. So the question is whether those figs are really his or they're considered hefker. As we're going to see soon. Another example is sufei anov. Let's say he has the end season grapes, which are low quality. This farmer locks his field to safeguard not those low quality grapes, but rather his mikshoyos, his cucumbers, his midlois, his melons, his pumpkins. But inevitably, the low grade produce will be protected within as well. Says the Brisa, what's the halacha? If this owner explicitly cares for those low quality fruit, then in that case, since he wants it, he's makbid that nobody should come take it, then you can't just go take it. There's asur mishum gezel, and likewise, there's a chiv meiser applied because it's not hefker. However, when we know that the homeowner is not makbid on them, he doesn't really care for those low quality fruit. Mutar mishum gezel, one can go ahead and take it. There's no gezel concern. Uptur mishum meiser, and there's no chiv meiser because it's hefker, and hefker is pater from meiser. So what do we see here? That although they're going to be safeguarded by the owner, but since that's not what he has in mind when he locks his orchard, therefore it doesn't grant any prominence, any chashivas to that fruit. It's considered to be hefker. Likewise, in our case, if crumbs on their own are inherently insignificant and batal, just by the mere fact that the owner happens to lock his home to safeguard his valuables, that doesn't grant any prominence to the crumbs. So that takes us back to the question. Once he does bedikas chametz and removes the chametz from his possession, why does he have to do bittul? Amar Rabbi Gezer, this is a concern shema yimtza gluska yafa. Perhaps on Pesach, he may have overlooked something, and he might encounter this nice-looking baked item, this bread, this cake, this cookie, v'daite iloya, and perhaps for a split second, he'll hesitate to go and burn it. He'll stop for a second. Should I take it? So for that split moment, he's going to be over by Yirah by Matzah. That's why the Chacham said, don't suffice with bdikas chametz. Perhaps you overlooked something. Do bittul. What does bittul do? It nullifies your chametz. You express this interest in your chametz. In which case, even should you happen to find something on Pesach, it's no longer yours. It's no longer considered proper chametz. It's batal. And therefore you won't be over. Says the Gemara, what's the concern? He might find something nice. As soon as he finds it, he'll do bittul. As the Farshim explained, to go burn it, perhaps he'll hesitate to burn such a high quality product. But to do bittul, why would he hesitate to do bittul? The first second he'll do bittul. Once he does that, he no longer is over by Yirah by Matzah. So again, why does bittul need to be done back during the time of b'dika? The concern is he might find something, fine. As soon as he finds it, do bittul then. Says the Gemara, Dilma mishkachasle lebasar isura. Perhaps he'll find this chametz after it's already asur on Pesach itself. V'lav b'shusei kaima. At that point, it's no longer regarded as his because he can no longer have hana, and something from which you cannot have benefit is not considered yours. Therefore, you can't do bittul because bittul can only apply to something which you own, not something which is no longer yours. So bittul can't be done on Pesach itself. That's why the Chacham required bittul to be done before Pesach. Don't Rabbi Lezer. Shnei dvarim einon b'shisi shel adam. There are two things which are technically out of a person's possession. He doesn't really own them. V'asana kosov ki'ilahim b'shisi. However, the Torah regarded them as though you own them. Ve'elu hein. What are these two things? Boir b'shisi rabim. If a person digs a pit out in the street, he doesn't own that property. Nevertheless, the Torah attributes that pit to the one who dug it. It's considered as though he owns it. So he's the owner of the Isser, and he's liable. He's responsible for any damage resulting from that bar. Although he doesn't monetarily own it, but he owns the Isser. V'chametz v'sheisho salamala. What's the second thing? Chametz after 6 hours, after Chatzos and Erev Pesach, although it's Asur B'Hana, technically it's not his. He's not really monetarily connected to this item any longer, but the Torah attributes it to him, considers him to be the owner, and he's over by Yerah by Matzah. So since monetarily he doesn't really own it, he can't do bittul. Says, okay, so that's why he can't do it on Pesach itself. But why does he have to do it all the way back by Bedikas Chametz, the night of the 14th? V'niftali ba'arba, v'niftali b'chamesh. Let him do bittul on the 4th or 5th hour of Erev Pesach, when it's still mutter. Says, we need to have a defined, designated time. Otherwise he'll overlook it, he'll miss it. Kivan de lav as manisuru, since that's not the time when the chametz becomes asur. V'lav zman bi'uruhu, nor is it the time that you do bir chametz. It's not a defined, set time. Dilma pasha v'lay mevatale, so perhaps he'll neglect and he won't do bittul. You need to have a determined set time, and that's why the Chachamim linked it to the time of bdikas chametz. V'niftali b'sheis. Okay, we need to have a specified time. What about at the beginning of the 6th hour on Erev Pesach, which is the time when you go burn your chametz? So let's say Erev Pesach begins 6 a.m. and 6 p.m. So the beginning of the 6th hour would be at 11 o'clock. That's a defined moment. Says, you can't do then either. Why? Given the Isur D'Rabbanan, since at that point it's Asur D'Rabbanan, you can't have Hamna from the chametz any longer. K'deraisa Damya, we treat it as though it's Asur Min HaTorah. And regard it as though it's no longer his. He can't do bittul. Therefore, bittul needs to take place before Pesach, during the time of Bdikas Chametz. So he told us that this concept applies to another area as well, meaning something which is Asur D'Rabbanan is regarded as though it's not yours, completely not yours. If a person takes something which is chametz and he uses it to be Mekadesh Isha from 6 and on, meaning from 11 o'clock Erev Pesach, where it's Asur B'Hana and on, even if he used these tough wheat, which grows in the Kurdish mountains, Hari Ararat, where the Teva landed. So even though it's tough, but if it got wet, we're concerned that perhaps it's chametz. And since it's past the 6th hour, past 11 o'clock, in which case it's Asur D'Rabbanan to Havana, Ein Choshishin L'Kedushin. Not concerned at all with his Kedushin. It's an invalid Kedushin because it's something which doesn't belong to him. Now Rashi asks, what do you mean there? If Min HaTorah, it's still his, now how can we say the Kedushin doesn't work? Says Rashi, because we know when a person does Kedushin, he does it with the mindset. He says, Kedas Moshe Yisrael. It's going to work only if the Rabbanan agree to it. In this case, the Rabbanan said, no, it's half-kir. They made it half-kir, so it's not yours, and therefore the Kedushin doesn't work. So in conclusion, we do bittul because we're concerned perhaps he'll find something on Pesach itself, in which case bittul no longer works. So the bittul needs to take place before Pesach, and we need a designated set time. That's why the Chachamim linked it with B'dikas Chametz. Right after B'dika, you do your bittul, which will ensure the compliance of the bittul requirement. Okay, time for a brief chazara of today's daf. We began with a discussion of behema or isa of Arunoina. So a portion of that goes to the king. The question is, who owns it? Who's considered to be the legal owner? The Gemara told us when it comes to a dough, then it's chayiv and chala regardless. We're concerned about confusion because not everybody understands that this dough partially will go to the king. When it comes to behema, we actually have two versions. According to the first version of Rava, it depends. If he has the ability to offset the tax obligation using money, in that case, the animal is considered to be the owner's. And an animal of Yisrael is chayiv m'char. If there's a direct claim to the animal, there's no way for him to offset it with money, then the animal is considered to be partially owned by the authorities, by the guy, and is parted from char. According to the second version of the Gemara, when it comes to behema, in any case, in either situation, the king is considered to have partial ownership and it's parted from char. We learned regarding the chametz of a guy, if the Yisrael accepted upon himself the achrayis, responsibility to look after it, then it's asur for him to have it in his possession. If he does not accept achrayis, then it's mutar. We learned that if a person finds chametz in his home on Yom Tov, he covers it with a kli. If he has chametz of a goy in his home, he must make a machitza of 10 tefachim. By hegdish, we're not concerned. A person would not accidentally eat something of hegdish. Now, what if one leaves town before Pesach and has chametz at home? Says Abaye, if it's before 30 days of Pesach, then there's no concern because the chametz will be inaccessible regardless. If it's within 30 days, and he intends on returning, then he must make sure to remove his chametz. Rabbi says, if he intends on returning, then even if he leaves town half a year before Pesach, he must make sure to get rid of his chametz. If it's within 30 days, then he has to tend to his chametz and remove it regardless. We learned that according to Tanakama, within 30 days of Pesach is the preparation period. According to Rav Shimon Gamliel, 2 weeks. We learned about Aim Mukta Mucha B'Torah, and we learned that one follows the bdika with bittul, because at that point the chametz is still mutter and it can be mevatel it, and it's a defined moment which will ensure that one remembers to do bittul.